Hello, and welcome to the Denver MuleSoft Meetup. We'll be covering Universal API Management on Anypoint Platform. And during our session, I will be going over an introduction of the Universal API Management and the 5 pieces of it. Discover, govern, which will have a demo, deploy, also a demo, manage, and engage. My name is Jared Mosely, and I'm a MuleSoft lead consultant here at Big Compass. I live in Seattle, Washington. I love to hike, I love to read, and I love to both listen and play music. My passions are curiosity, I'm very exploration focused, connections, which makes me fit in great at Big Compass because I love finding connections and making connections, and dogs, which I have 2 of, and they run my life and I love them. Today, we're going to talk about the recent changes that have happened in the integration space and how that has changed MuleSoft's approach and offerings in API management. There are some updates to existing offerings, new offerings that are already out and ready for to use, and some coming in the near future. Let's start off talking about the change in the landscape just since I've started using MuleSoft a few years ago. When we look at the availability of API management technologies, if we look back about 5 years or so ago, there were only a handful of major players to choose from if you were looking for an API management platform. Obviously, you could DIY and use a homegrown solution, maybe even piece one together from a bunch of small managed solutions. But for a fully managed platform experience, only a handful. Now, there are a ton of options when it comes to API management. We have gateway technologies, developer portals, management and control planes, and they all seem to be saying the same thing. We'll take care of it for you, and we'll make it easy. And not just management options, but just the straight adoption of APIs in general is rising rapidly. In today's context, talking only about API-led connectivity, driving reuse, avoiding custom code, simple connectors, that's outdated. Don't get me wrong, those are all great ideas, and we do champion them with our clients, but they're not special anymore. An average organization is using hundreds of APIs today, and the real problem of our clients is not API adoption and creation, but more and more API discovery and API management. In other words, we aren't having trouble convincing clients to build APIs. They're building them. They're creating them faster than ever, and they're using various technologies, hosting an on-premise, hybrid, multi-cloud operations, and they have multiple teams working concurrently to create and manage these APIs. They're building a ton of APIs and faster than ever. And with the growth, they're reaching a point where they have new pains. These organizations are struggling to effectively discover, manage, and use all the APIs they've created. All these fragmented solutions have reduced agility, efficiency, and control. Clients are having trouble keeping track of all their APIs and knowing which hold the data they need, how to access them, and what side effects are possible from using those APIs. In fact, the APIs themselves have inconsistent security and governance. And since they're separated out in the environments, they're especially hard to consistently operate and manage. You have separate teams working on each part of this, and none of them are able to use the same languages and tools for these problems. In such a world, how can we help our clients use their API networks to their full extent? To the extent that we sold them on, and that we know where the real power of interconnectedness lay. That's how we come to Universal API Management, where the focus is being able to manage the full life cycle of an API built anywhere with anything. Before we dive deep, I want to start with an analogy to explain what role Universal API Management would play. Most of the solutions we use today evolved from being unicellular to multicellular organisms. Companies building these solutions are no longer asking for extra capability to build these unicellular solutions, but rather that they need a central nervous system to manage the complex multicellular organisms they've created. Universal API management is exactly that, a central nervous system for your technology stack. It's not an individual product. Rather, it is a collection of new and existing products that enables customers to manage and secure any API, no matter the origin, architecture, or environment. With this release, MuleSoft has pioneered a new API management category, Universal, by opening the full lifecycle API management capabilities to APIs built and deployed anywhere. The collection of capabilities defining Universal API management will allow clients to accelerate application delivery, implement modern architectures, and use the technologies of their choice, all while maintaining consistent security and quality. Let's take a closer look at the new and existing products that make up Universal API management on Anypoint Platform. We will cover the updates to existing products later in the session, but I want you to take note of 3 important new products under the umbrella of Universal API management: API Catalog CLI, Flex Gateway, and API Governance. All 3 are already out and ready to use. And lastly, we have API Experience Hub, a new developer portal offering, which will be available in Q4 of this year. Let's say your client has decided to embrace Mule for all their new ventures, but they're still using a handful of Node.js servers deployed on AWS and some Java Spring APIs deployed on-premise. Previously, these would have been managed and governed as separate organisms. That's all right, but it gets annoying quick. First off, if you're developing a Mule app that needs to talk to these, how do you even know what APIs are already available to you? I guess you can hope that this is the one organization that actually has manual documentation, but I wouldn't recommend it. So to combat that, MuleSoft has released API Catalog CLI. Those who have worked with MuleSoft know we have Anypoint Exchange, a catalog of all the APIs across the organization. You can view the documentation, see the API spec in an easy-to-read format, and use a mock API to get a quick handle on the design. But MuleSoft recognizes that manually uploading specs is a tedious and unrealistic approach at scale. So they are providing us with a way to automatically catalog any API, even non-Mule APIs, in Anypoint Exchange, using their existing development lifecycles with a CI/CD plugin. This plugin can be dropped into a CI/CD pipeline, and it extracts the relevant metadata and documentation and catalogs the API directly into Anypoint Exchange. This creates a much more scalable solution to the problem of people not knowing what APIs exist and how to interact with them. Beyond the basic cataloging, it also supports diverse protocols like Async API or GraphQL, as we are seeing the adoption of these protocols rising exponentially for new and emerging use cases, and MuleSoft is trying to stay ahead of the curve. This allows an organization to easily create a centralization of their API catalog while keeping it tech agnostic and without putting such a burden on developers that the catalog remains the pipe dream of architects. Fantastic. Now we can see all our APIs together, but how do we ensure that all these disparate APIs are following our organization's best practices? Isn't it more likely that each team has created their own, often contradictory rules? What happens when the organization grows and consistency is needed? As a response, MuleSoft has launched their new API governance tool. Their vision is to bring API product and security teams closer together and make governance easy. Traditionally, security teams struggle to enforce governance as the process is manual and inconsistent, and they are always pressed on resources with the sprawl of APIs, a problem that has only gotten bigger. But honestly, the biggest pain point has been the friction added to development with additional review cycles. In my experience, this can take as long as the initial development sometimes, and nothing is more annoying than putting in the hours to knock out an API, only to spend the next week going back and forth with an external security team, ironing out small issues just to get approval for our deployment? Well, with this new API governance tool, I can identify possible issues before I even think about deployment. I can see in a clear and concise description what the issues are I need to fix, and best of all, it all happens without a single email. And while the product is very powerful standalone, API governance really stabilizes the foundation of universal API management by ensuring consistent quality and compliance across every API, new or old, Mule or non-Mule, in the enterprise. This not only brings a smile to every security officer's face, but us developers love the quick review cycles validations. The instantaneous feedback is not only clear and concise, but once you fix the issues, you're immediately ready to go. I don't know about y'all, but quick feedback loops is one of the reasons I got into programming in the first place. So seeing this makes me very happy. On release, there are already a handful of pre-built rule sets for you to try out, which we'll see in a moment. But creating a new rule set is as easy as, you guessed it, publishing it to Exchange. So not only is it easy to create and update the rules for API governance, but the rules to follow are documented in the same catalog as the APIs themselves. A lovely way to do it compared to hopping between different organizations' Confluence pages, trying to find where the heck the rules you're supposed to be following are, or trying to follow links from your security team that toss back a 401 because you haven't requested access to the page telling you what security rules to follow yet. Well, I could go on all day. Let's take a look at the overall structure of how this works, and then we'll see it in action. The basic idea is that you are building from rules on up. You start out with a bunch of single purpose rules, create rule sets by combining them, then you create profiles by combining rule sets. At that point, you can choose which APIs to apply the profile to and see if they are conformant or not. Let's see just how easy it is to create a validation applied to all the APIs in an organization. In case you haven't seen it yet, API governance is now a first-class tool in Anypoint Platform that you can find on the sidebar. Let's hop in and we'll start creating our first profile. Start off with the name and what the goal of the profile is. I'm going to make it a test to ensure that we have at least examples for our endpoints. It's a good idea to fill out the purpose to avoid someone coming knocking asking why their API is being reviewed by the profile you've created. There are a bunch of predefined rule sets, and we can mix and match them to ensure that our design is following our organization's guidelines. While they're a good jumping off point, I would expect an organization to, at most, use these as a reference point for creating your own rule sets, and to keep in mind that, just like code, creating single-purpose rule sets and combining them will allow greater flexibility and specificity for your profiles. We'll use the required examples rule set for this example. This will check all our design specs to ensure that our operations and parameters for those operations have examples. Next, we can see all our APIs and we can find which APIs we want to add to our profile. The filter criteria provided can make use of the tags or categories of the APIs, allowing you to do groupings for your APIs. Since you are only defining filter criteria instead of adding the APIs directly, any APIs you add in the future that meet your conditions will automatically be added under your profile. I'd want all of our company's APIs to at least have examples so users can know what to expect. Now, we can set up who gets notified in case the APIs don't meet the requirements from the profile. There are some great defaults, but I'm going to set it up so only I get notified. Now, we can move on to the final review. Note in the bottom right corner that this takes a bit of time to validate all your APIs. That's part of why this is a pseudo live demo instead of actually live. Let's check if it's all good and we can create the profile. This will automatically take us to a nice dashboard to see how we're doing. Unsurprisingly, since this is a random sandbox, any of our devs can use to toss up a test API, any kind of POC. We have a lot of non-conformant APIs and only a smattering of conformant ones. We can take a deeper dive into each API and how it is conforming to our requirements. While you can't see exactly which endpoints in the spec aren't conformant at this point, you can see how many and what kind of issues. You can also easily see which APIs are conformant and give yourself a pat on the back. Expanding them should show no violations, but you might have some warnings or info depending on what rule sets you choose to enforce with your profile. Now let's dive into Flex Gateway, which turns the basic proxy idea that you've always been able to do with MuleSoft into a fleshed out first-class citizen. Their new ultra-fast lightweight gateway helps clients bring Anypoint Platform benefits to every service and drive wall-to-wall adoption. Flex Gateway makes it very easy for developers to manage either through web UI or locally through a set of declarative config files and run in virtually any environment. Any physical hardware or VM, cloud or on-prem, and in containerized environments. With ultra-fast response times and a small footprint, the new API Gateway provides the ability to manage, discover, and reuse all of a client's services from a single unified platform. This is starting to make the vision of universal API management a reality for many organizations. Let's see the new gateway in action with a demo. We start off with the Docker installation instructions. This will give you everything that you need to get running. The only thing I'm not going to do from here is the download and install of the Flex Gateway container image for Docker. Everything else will be included in the demo just to show how easy this is. First, we're going to create and register the gateway with a single command. After the registration is complete, it'll write a few files to the same directory. And all you need from those is to keep track of the ID generated for those config files. Next, we'll start the gateway using the generated config files. Again, just a single command. And now the gateway is already up and running. You can view and manage the gateway from Docker, just like any other container. Now let's get to the meat of it and let's add an API to this gateway. We can see the replicas created by the commands we ran. These are the replicas running on the Docker instance. Just like with workers, one is fine for devs and possibly QA, but you want two or more for high availability for production use cases. Now, let's actually add the API. First, we select the runtime that we want to add the API to. We'll be adding it to Meetup. Next, we select the API that we want to add. I'll be adding one of our junior devs APIs that she created while going through the developer fundamentals course. It'll autofill the basic information, and you're pretty much good to go. Unfortunately, if you're doing multiple APIs, it does look like you will need to add them one by one, at least for now. Next, we set up the endpoint that the gateway should be sending the request to. You can grab the endpoint from Runtime Manager, and it should be all you need. Check that all the information is correct, and then we can deploy it. Now, we can make a request to the API locally, and our gateway will forward this request onto our API in Cloud Hub. And we see our results. Easy peasy. This all ends up getting tied together with API Manager, an offering we all already know and love. We can apply custom or pre-built policies to specific APIs or API groups, allowing a very fine level of control over every API in an organization. Along with this ability to easily manage APIs deployed anywhere, we can now also track and view insights into how users are interacting with our applications. This includes things like policy violations and trends. The only thing left is providing a way to create an organization-specific design for this experience, so each of your clients can create and customize their own developer hubs for anyone needing to access their APIs. That's where the new developer portal offering comes in. This offering provides clients with the ability to create pixel-perfect developer portals for API product managers to engage with their consumers and evolve new business models. This lets you customize your portal to your needs and put the attention where you want it. To continue learning, we've provided some resources, including a few blog posts about the announcements of these tools and a few tutorials for helping you understand how to set these up and how they work. More tutorials will be coming as these tutorials are fleshed out and everyone gets a chance to have their hands on them. Thank you so much for tuning in to this session of the Denver MuleSoft Meetup. Please leave any comments below and feel free to join the Denver MuleSoft Meetup at meetups.mulesoft.com/Denver.